I'll hit record here for those who aren't able to join us. So it should be going now. Ellen, thanks for asking. And I wanted to make sure that I addressed it with the formal class session started because I love what you had asked. And you had mentioned starting off the paper with a song lyric. Hi, Rain. So Ellen, I think that's a great idea. Attention grabbers, as you mentioned, are really important to begin a paper, and this is a really good college level writing skill. So if you have a song that seems relevant, a quote from that as you begin is a really good creative technique. Does that sound okay?
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, sure, absolutely. And since we were hitting on your questions, did you have others or was that about it?
Yes. So then, roadmap for, because I'm used to kind of previewing my points, like state the thesis, and then, we'll look at this, we'll look at this, and we'll look at that.
Yeah.
How should I couch that? Because I've divided my paper, like you suggested with the headings,
Awesome.
and, but it creates a really long run-on sentence roadmap. So,
Okay, so like with the thesis statement.
So I separated the thesis statement and the roadmap. I said, here's my position on this. Let's
Okay.
explore this, and that.
Oh,
So
I see. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, good question. So you can definitely split it into a couple sentences. There's nothing wrong with that, especially for a paper like this one that addresses many different topic areas. So you could do a sentence saying, to begin, the paper will examine Harris's versus Bernstein's view on child development and nature versus nurture, or the role of parents. And we will also address the foundation of research for the view of Harris and just proceed that way. So you don't have to smush it all into one sentence.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anything else?
I think that's it for now. I'll let you know if anything else comes up.
Well, please do. You have really good questions. Rain, how are you doing? Not sure if Rain can hear us, but I'm glad you're here. It's so nice to see you guys. It really makes my day. So thanks for coming. So,
Rain,
there's a chat. Perfect. Oh, that's all right. Rain, I'm so glad you asked. Yep, absolutely. So the first thing that I want to do is briefly talk through the paper. And then Rain will dive into APA. So we've got about 25 minutes left. We'll try and wrap around 5. And that'll give us time to talk through APA format because that is very important for this course. Does that sound okay? Awesome. No problem. Yeah, chat is a great way to communicate too. So speak up, chat, whatever you all prefer. So you should be able to see the screen now. And we'll take a look at the paper and just what it entails. I have sent out some information and we talked about this a little bit previously, but the most important thing with these papers that we'll encounter in our course is to address every single prompt point. And when we say prompt point, it would be these bullets here. So let me ask as we start, and no shame if you have not, but either using the Zoom reactions like thumbs up, thumbs down, or in the chat, have you started the paper? Has everybody been able to dive into it a little bit? That's okay, Jacob. That's all right, Keelan, no problem. That's why we're here. You've got plenty of time, okay? So no shame in that, like I said. Trying to see. Hi, Joanna. Can you hear us? Hopefully, yes. Oh, chats, great. You cannot hear us, okay. I'm not quite, oh, now you can. All right, fabulous. You just wrote a little, you got some quotes. Thanks, Rain. Great. Okay, way to go. So if you haven't started, like I said, it's all good. We'll talk through this now. So we have a video source here And if you haven't gotten a chance to watch it, check it out. It's pretty quick and brief, and it talks about the influence of parents on child development. So when we think about children, and you can think about yourself or kids in any other setting, we need to think about their growth and what makes us who we are. And the two variables that will be examined here would be peers and parents. So I'm going to share a little document, and we're going to do a little just a brainstorming activity. But we'll first talk over the parts of the paper. So back to the Blackboard page here. The work of Harris in this video, basically what she has to say is that peers are the ones who impact the development of a child. And by development, I mean the values, the behaviors, the lifestyle, the choices of that child, who this child becomes. And those could be healthy or less than healthy traits, right? So that's something we can examine when we think about twin studies. You can see on the right-hand side here, a little transcript, kind of summary points here about what influences a child. In particular, we might examine the concept of an adolescent or a young adult who commits a mass act of violence. Oftentimes you might see blame on the parents in that situation. Oh, well, what were the mother and father doing, for example? Now, what we need to remember when we use the word parents is that not every family, of course, has a mother and a father present in the home. So this could be a parent, if that's the situation. This could involve step parents, or it could be a guardian. There are a lot of people who might live with a grandparent or a foster situation. So when we use the word parent, we're really talking about whatever consistent adults are raising that child and involved in that child's life. So I just add that as we consider different and diverse situations. But when we're thinking about this influence, Harris would argue that peers are the ones who influence children in their development. So if a child, a young adult or an adolescent commits a mass act of violence, that the blame should not be placed upon the parents, because Harris would argue that the parents have very little influence in that regard. The text gives us more information regarding a kind of a broad spectrum of influence and all the different factors that can influence a child. But in particular, the text supports the idea that families do have a major role. So when we begin with this paper, comparing and contrasting, you might be familiar with the idea of nature versus nurture. And that's it's a little bit of what we're talking about, but really this is more the nurture side, nurture from peers versus nurture from parents. So it's not the same as nature and nurture, but it's a similar subject matter. Is the view of Harris supported by psychological research? So you'll begin, and as Ellen mentioned, headings can be a really good way to organize this paper. And we'll talk about headings in APA format. You can begin with a little introduction, then you will compare and contrast the work of Harris, which is included in this video you can watch, to the insight about development that you find in our course text, and in particular, the emphasis that the course text has on the important and influential role of parents. So we can compare and contrast, find some similarities or differences between these two sources. And then we need to address whether the view of Harris, who believes that peers have the greatest influence, is supported by psychological research. And that is a whole nother part of the prompt. So even though it's included in the same bullet point, please make sure that you address this. You could use a separate heading category if you want to, or keep it under the same one. But a common mistake that I find, and that's why I'm mentioning it, is that students might see this prompt point, see compare, contrast, and just say, oh, okay, yeah, so Harris says this and Bernstein says this, and then move on. And you can see there's a whole nother section here. So if I need to know if her work is supported by research, I can look at whatever research she might cite in this video. I can also look maybe for outside research studies that support or deny her claims. And I can answer this question very specifically and clearly before moving on to the next point. So as long as you all meet the page length requirement, which will be addressed down below, address all the prompt points and cite the number of required sources and include that scripture, of course, that's that final part of the prompt here. As long as you do those things and you have a reasonably accurate spelling and grammar and you use the APA format, you'll receive full credit on the paper. Okay. The biggest deductions that I see are people forgetting to talk about parts of this. And when you address it, it doesn't have to be paragraphs upon paragraphs. Just be sure that you hit on it. So the next one, how would you criticize the theory of Harris? So do you really believe that she's correct in her assertions about the influence of peers versus the influence of parents? And what are the highlights, the potential positives of her idea that parents are blamed? So I'll give you a little spoiler, although I want you to think about it for yourself. But I think a really obvious one is in the situation of a mass act of violence, like we've mentioned. If a youth does commit a crime like that, it can often be really harmful if the public turns on the parents and, for instance, does graffiti on their house and throws something through their window and says, oh, it's all your fault. That's not productive, and it's often not accurate at all. Okay, so that could be an example of a positive in her work. And then finally, what does scripture tell us about nature versus nurture and the role of a parent in child development? So that's when you'll integrate Bible verses as you conclude. Ellen gave a really good idea about creatively starting her introduction for her paper. And I think that's a really nice strategy for your intro, outlining with a roadmap and a strong thesis statement what we're talking about here. And then as you conclude, you'll be restating those main ideas just to summarize your points. And that's really good practice for basically any paper. So you'll see here the length requirement. Lots of times people just look at the top part in this blue video area and they miss this. I'm not quite sure why it's formatted this way. So I wanted to talk about it with all of you so that you can see that part too. So the paper should be a minimum of 3 pages. And that does not count the cover page or the reference page. So at least 3 full pages of written content. Another issue that I see often coming up is a student might do 2 pages and a paragraph and say, oh, well, it's 3. There are 3 pages. And I say it's not 3 full pages. So to clarify that, we need 3 full pages and at least 2 outside resources. And the textbook could count as one of those. We should definitely cite the textbook because this first part of the prompt looks at the work of Harris versus Bernstein. So you already know you'll be talking about the course text. And then finally, obviously reviewing the rubric, but the reference for the video with Harris's work is given to you here. So you've got a freebie on that, okay? To find the rubric, just click on the paper and then click view rubric and you'll be able to see all the sections, but it's really just what we talked through together just now. And I see the chat. What if we cannot write 3 full pages? Good question. So that's when we pull in more depth of analysis, Rain. So a way to kind of bulk up a paper if you're struggling to find content is to provide examples. For instance, in this paper, there is a personal reflection section in the rubric, and you can share some examples from your own life or things you've observed related to the topics. You can also pull in some other sources to support your statements. So you might want to look at some research studies using the CCU online library. And if you're ever unsure about how to use that, here on the dashboard on the left-hand side, we can click My Announcements. More announcements on the bottom right there. And then scrolling down, we're looking for the announcement that has a book because it's a library video. Keep going, keep going. There it is. So that's a YouTube video that I created walking you through the use of the CCU online library. So Raina, if you've got some personal ideas, more of the biblical perspective, there are a lot of stories in the Bible about parenting, and you can think about the story of Joseph, or even the way that Jesus himself was parented by Mary and Joseph here on earth, and the role of a parent in the life of a child. That can be a good way to bulk up the paper, bringing in more detail with the biblical perspective, research, and personal insight or reflection. Does that help? Yeah, right. Excellent. So with that said, that is the paper. Does anybody want to address anything about that? Question? Yeah.
I was wondering, for that reference page, do you want like a full citation type page, like the I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. Like an actual like an MLA type citation, or
Great
what are you
question.
looking for?
Yeah, we are going to go straight into that. Thank you for asking. Speak up or type in the chat. Is your experience mostly with MLA or APA?
I've only used MLA.
Okay. Oh, all you guys. Okay. Lots of MLA. Ellen, you said you've done both. I'm sorry, guys. Well, the good news is it's not too different, so I will help you. Thanks for giving me the heads up on that too. I know it depends on the university. It also depends on the study program, but it is good to get into the habit of APA format as well as MLA. It just never hurts to understand both. So you may be familiar with the OWL at Purdue. If you have not, yes, I see Jacob, you're nodding your head, right? Yeah, good. I'm glad. It's kind of, it's one of the most popular resources for formatting. And so we'll take the last part of our class here to talk about the APA format for student papers so that we feel more comfortable going in. And Jacob, that way it'll address the reference page as well. Okay, really good question. So all I did is I went to Google, I typed OWL at Purdue APA 7th edition. 7th edition is the current edition for APA format. So a couple of years ago, we were using 6th and they rolled out 7th and we all had to learn a new thing, but it's really not too different. So I will click, should be fine just clicking on this top one. Yep, this quick top link here, it's owl.purdue.edu and you're looking for APA. So there are all sorts of pieces of information that we can get to here. I'm going to X this ad out on the bottom. You'll see here on the left-hand side, it says APA formatting and style guide for 7th edition. You can click on that and lo and behold, you will see a large drop-down menu with many, many resources for anything you could ever want to do in APA format. Specifically, it's nice to look at the reference list. I just clicked reference list basic rules, and it'll tell you exactly what you need to do and how to cite different things. However, I myself am a visual person. Some of you may be the same. So instead of going through each of these things on the left, what I myself find most helpful to do to start with is to go to this left-hand side where it says APA sample paper. So I'm going to click on that. And this will give you a visual for what we need to be doing. So you'll notice there is an APA student paper and an APA professional paper. So as you may have guessed, the one that you'll use will be the student paper. And we can view it. I just blew it up by clicking that little square button at the bottom. So we can view it here in Microsoft Word format. So this is just a random paper. I don't think this is a real person. It says Dr. Richard Teeth, but it is an APA format example for you. So what you'll notice is for APA 7th edition format for student papers, we need page numbers here on the top right. Then we need to hit enter, enter, enter to get down here for this heading. And that's bold. That's the title of your paper. Then we'll hit enter again, write your name. and then you'll say the department and your university. So we're social and behavioral sciences here at CCU in the psychology class, Colorado Christian University. And then it's the class name and number. Myself, you can say Dr. Anna Vick, and then the date. Okay, so that's what our title page looks like. You might remember if you've done APA before, back in the 6th edition, there was this big old running head on the top. It was all capital letters. You don't need to do that anymore. So that's a change that has come in the 7th. As you scroll down, you'll see top right here, we have another page number. We have a bold title for the paper beginning directly after that page number. And then we're indenting at the beginning of each paragraph. Okay. So for the in-text citation, what you'll want to do for any comment that's taken from a source that's not a direct quote is you'll want to put parentheses, author, comma, year. So here's an example. You can see where it says Wilson. Is this too small? Can you guys see okay? Go a little bigger. There we go. You can see where it says Wilson, comma, 1998. That's because this statement before that, one such measure, yada, yada, is not a direct quote. So anytime you're referencing Bernstein, for instance, or the work of Harris, or another source you might pull, parentheses, author, comma, year. If you ever have a source, by the way, where it doesn't give you a year, you'll do N period, D period for not dated. Okay, so author, comma, year in parentheses right after that. And then you'll be sharing the statement, paraphrasing it in your own words. If you use a direct quote, like the cool idea that you were having for the song introduction, Ellen, then you'll be using author, year, and page number. So an example of this could be Pounder, this guy right here. You'll see quotation marks, and then there's the direct quote, which means we're not changing any of the words from the source. We're taking it straight out of there. We try to avoid, by the way, doing too much of that because obviously it's important to integrate your own ideas and insight, but sometimes direct quotes can be really helpful. Just try to avoid like a whole paragraph because that'll rack up a self-plagiarism score. Okay. Or a plagiarism score is what I mean. And self-plagiarism, by the way, would be using your own work that you've earned a grade for before and just copying and pasting. Bottom line, we try to avoid copying and pasting. If you're going to do it, make sure that we get the quotations before and after it. And then for that direct quote, you'll go parentheses, author, comma, year, comma, P period for the page number. And then you'll list that number, close parentheses, end the sentence with punctuation. Okay, so that's the difference between the direct quote citation and this guy, Davis 2009, is just a citation of a source, but you're stating that information in your own words. Okay. Scrolling down to the reference page, here are some examples of the headings. You can just get those, pop those bold headings in there to organize. And that's a nice way to make sure you've addressed everything in your paper. Down I go. This is your paper will not be this long. So you don't need to worry about tables or visuals for this one either, but it'll teach you how to do that. All right, here we are on the reference page. Okay, so bold up top, and we'll have the word references. You might recognize works cited from MLA or other formatting, but for APA, it's references. So bold here with references. And then we have our references listed. How to cite these things in APA format. For this one, it's actually given it to you in the assignment description. You will want to cite the Bible in APA format as well. That should be included in the reference page. But you can see these guys are in hanging indent format. So I'm going to show you how to do hanging indent format. And I'm also going to show you, I see Ellen says the bold headings are aligned left and italicized. So they can be. I'll show you how that works. Let me find where the headings one is so that we can look at them together. Yeah, so here's the example. Let me share it. Good question, Ellen, on the OWL website. This is the page. I just went to headings here on the left so that you can see the example. So you'll start with the title, and then you can start with each of these headings coming after it. So you don't have to go lower and lower. You can just do bold headings for this one. But what I mean is that if you were wanting to go into smaller and smaller categories within a section, which you will not need to do for a paper like this, that's more like a dissertation. If you were going to do that, then you would be going into these italics, into the indented, into the italics. Okay. But as it is, you can just bold them. Does that help? You guys may do dissertations someday, but today is not that day. So, okay, sweet. In that case, are you familiar also with Sun? You can type Son of Citation Machine. This is just Google, Son of Citation Machine APA. There are a lot of websites that help you cite. This is one of them. If you have something else you like better, that's fine too. But basically, this is a website that will cite sources for you in APA format. So I'm just going to click journal, and then I would type my article in there and hit search. Let's say if I'm doing a book, I can do The Body Keeps the Score. That's one that comes to mind. It's a book about trauma. So I just hit search. This is just an example. And usually the book may be in this list here. So I'll say cite, because that's the one I was thinking of. And it'll tell me, oh, we have some of the information for you. Great. Okay, continue. So this is not a perfect search engine, but it's just a good one to know about. Let's say complete citation. And there it gives me a little citation, and I can go copy citation. And then it gives you more options that you don't have to use. But there will be some ads that pop up and stuff like that. But this is a good place to start. I see a chat. No, Rain, you don't need to unless you start making smaller categories. But for a paper this short, that wouldn't be necessary. Unless you really want to. Okay. Perfect. Yep, absolutely. So from there, you then can take them and put them into your reference page. So I like the Son of Citation Machine. I think it's helpful. The one thing is it's a robot. It's not perfect. So what we then need to do is go back to our little OWL website and make sure that the formatting is correct. So reference list books, for instance, here on the left-hand side, I'm going to click that. Whoops. We're all on the OWL. Okay, perfect. Scrolling down, and it's going to tell me, hey, here's how you'll cite the book. And then I'll check for the output of Son of Citation Machine and make sure that it looks correct. So it's not perfect. It's not a miracle worker, but it's a really good place to start. Okay, so that's how we do it with the reference page. For the hanging indent, I'll just show you that. I'm just going to take these example references. So that's the last thing we'll do, and then we'll see if there are any other questions, and then we'll wrap up. But this has been a nice little APA format rundown here. So I want to make these normal so that I can show you. This is just a random list of references from the website. So I've just included them here. So I'm going to say, okay. And I'm going to take the indent off of these. All right, so here's my list of little references. So I want to turn these into APA format. The first thing I'm going to do is highlight them all, make it into Times size 12, Times New Roman, font size 12. Then I'm going to make sure that they're in alphabetical order. So we have A here for author, S for Stoneman, E for editor, so not good. These are not alphabetical. So I'm going to copy this one, paste it under the A because we need our references to be in alphabetical order. Okay, A, E, S. L is not in alphabetical, so I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it under the E reference and before the S. Okay, so now they're in alphabetical order. And now what I need to do is highlight them all. I'm going to go up here to paragraph. There's a little arrow pointing down. It says paragraph settings, and this is under the home page in Word. Clicked on paragraph. I'm going to do special. Under indentation, I'm going to click hanging. Line spacing, I'm going to click double because the reference page should be double spaced. And then right here, this little box where it says don't add space between paragraphs of the same style, I'm going to click that one as well. Click OK. And they should come out in a pretty nice hanging indent. Now this one, the margins are a little messed up. So if you need to edit it, obviously you do. Because as I said, you know, it's a robot, it's not perfect, but that way we at least get the feel for it. So the hanging indent will look like this with the first line over here, next line with an indentation, first line, then an indent, and there's no extra space between the references. Okay. Hopefully that helped a little bit. With that said, anything else that you all want to talk about or look at or hear about?
What kind of title would be appropriate?
Great
Just like
question.
something generally related to the content, or?
Whatever you want it to be. Good question. Some people get really creative with titles, which is really fun. But you could make it Bernstein versus Harris, the influence of parents, for instance. You could make it influence of parents versus peers on child development. But I'm just kind of throwing out a couple ideas. It could be something really straightforward like that.
Awesome. Okay.
Cool. Anything else? Well, I'm thrilled to see you guys. Thanks for coming. Please get in touch if you need anything, but it seems like we're off to a good start. I hope this paper is fun. It's kind of cool to think about your own growth and what got you to where you are and what you see in other people as well. So cool. Of course. Yes. Rain, thank you for being here. All of you, thank you. Good job. Yes, absolutely. And we'll be in touch. Thanks again for your presence and have a really nice evening. Okay.
Thank you.